All right, so if there's one thing that's gonna make installing a bathroom much easier, it's having a nice level and flat floor. So even before you install your new tub, or if you're doing a shower, you wanna make sure what your structure is and how level it is. Now this is gonna be probably a little bit more important in older homes because they have a tendency to kind of settle. But even new construction, nothing's perfect. You have to really address and make sure that everything is gonna work out. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna self-level this entire bathroom so we have a nice flat, smooth, and level area. And best way to, first to address this is just to check out to see how unlevel it really is. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised, but in this addition above, this is an attic space above a garage, I actually am almost 3/8 of an inch out in 4 foot. That is definitely not acceptable. In a lot of ways, you really want to be perfectly flat and level in setting a tub. Now there are tubs that you can use mortar and basically set it in mortar and level things out. But really it is a lot easier at this stage just to self-level everything, and then you have a nice foundation for your tub. Now if your tub does require or recommend mortar, you can go ahead and do that, but you'll be able to make it really a loose mixture so that you can just set your tub rather than trying to fuss around and making it level. So be sure you check your entire bathroom area. It looks like we're probably going to most likely have a good 3/8 of an inch of leveler on this side of the room. So we're going to go ahead and prime this surface before we even prep for the leveler. Meaning I'm going to put some indications everywhere to get an idea of what is level so that we know what we have to move our floor leveler to. But what we're going to be using is a primer for the Ardex liquid backer board. Now you want to pay attention to the actual type of self-leveler that you're using. Almost every single leveler out there is going to require some kind of primer over a wood substrate. So be sure you buy the appropriate type of primer for your bathroom. And really this takes a couple hours to dry. So you want to do this if you want to try to self-lever everything in one day. You better get ahead of it and try to do it ahead of time. So on wood substrate, you want to use full strength. So just straight out of the gallon, and we're just going to work it into the subfloor with a 1/2 inch nap ruler. So really simple process, but it does take time to dry. It needs to completely dry before we can use the self-leveler. So just work that into the subfloor. And what this does is just gives it a good coating and kind of prevents that self-leveler from having all the moisture zapped out of it. So it's like a bonding agent, but it's also something that's going to prevent your self-leveler from kind of setting up too quickly and then not getting a strong bond. But priming is absolutely imperative, whether it's a concrete subfloor or a wood subfloor like this. And you can self-level within 24 hours, but once you go past that time frame, you're going to have to prime again. So if you're trying to do this at the end of the day, that's fine, just as long as you self-level in the morning. But today we're going to get this on, and then we're going to move on to the self-leveler so that we can actually get our tub in tomorrow. And this OSB will definitely soak in. So you just have to let that dry for a couple hours, and you can move on to prepping and self-leveling this. Okay, so one quick thing for around your toilet flange, you can just use a little bit of spray foam to keep that floor leveler out of that area. This is also great for an area like this where I have a hole right next to my plumbing stack. So just put a little bit of foam in there. Okay, so if there's one thing about floor leveler, you really have to make sure that you seal everything around the room. So I'm just going to use some acrylic caulk and go around all the seams at the base of the wall here and caulk this, because floor leveler loves to seep its way into everything. So just simply use some acrylic caulk to prevent that from happening. In our plumbing hole here for our tub, we want to put some kind of blocker. I'm just going to use a piece of trim here. And same thing at this entrance. We're just going to put a little piece of trim here. Okay, so the other important detail is to provide a space against the wall. So when you do floor leveler or anything like this, you need to give a little bit of expansion and contraction. You don't want to be just pouring it straight to the wall. Now this is a little bit overkill for such a thin layer of floor leveler, but if you were getting up to like that 1 inch thickness or something like that, then this is going to be more important for you to maintain a gap between the wall, because this stuff does need a little bit of room for expansion contraction, just like your tile installation. So I just always have a roll of this pink foam on hand, and I just basically staple this into place and then cut the excess off that we don't need. Okay, so we got everything sealed. We used some expanding foam around our toilet flange so nothing gets in and around there. We closed off where our connection to our tub goes, and then we have our foam going around. So as long as everything's sealed, we should be in good shape. Now it's time to reference our laser and put some indications of where the self-leveler needs to go to. That's one misconception about floor leveler. A lot of people think that once you just pour it out, it's just going to automatically go to level. That's not really the case. It will flatten out by itself, but it won't go to level. You have to actually push it and manipulate it to get to that level area. So you're going to need to have some kind of indication of what level is, and the best way or easiest way to do that is to simply use some drywall screws. Now there is a minimum thickness that you're going to want to go. You're going to want to go a minimum of 1/8 inch. So this is the high side of our bathroom. So we're going to set some screws at 1/8, and then we're going to basically reference our level and make sure that we have the screw heads at that indication. So let's go ahead and make this like an 1/8 inch here. Now you can put as many screws as you want, just as long as you know, because I mean, honestly, the more the better, because you'll be able to see in all the areas of what's level. So we've got 3.5 inches. So that's what we want to make all our screw heads. We want to make them all 3.5 inches. That's level. So yeah, so you got to go off the laser. That's definitely the indication point. So yeah, we almost got 5/8 of an inch of leveler on this side, 3/4 of an inch at that corner. So that corner right there is the lowest, and this is the highest point over here. So if we have enough indication points around here, we should be in good shape. We'll just put one more on the other side of this toilet. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points on this side, and we've got 5 on this side, and 1 in the back. You really don't have to do anything in the middle for the most part because you'll be able to push it to this level. But if you wanted to, there's no harm in putting as many of these as you want. All right, so that's where, so you just basically adjust this screw until that point. So as you can see here, I almost have a 1/2 inch of leveler that needs to be right in that area. So once I put the floor leveler, I'll be able to know exactly where I need to be with it. All right, so floor leveler, don't be afraid of it. This is really gonna make everything else easier. Just a couple of things you really need to use to move this around. And one would be some kind of a blade like this that you can just push it around. You could honestly just use a 2x4 or a piece of trim and just move it around with your hand. But one of these on an extension stick will really help out a lot. Now, since we are trying to make this level, we're gonna be basically pushing this to our screw hole points. But if you were just trying to get something flat and you just needed a coating, you can use a gauge rake. So something like this, and this has basically, you just run this across the floor and it takes all the excess out. So this is considered a gauge rake. It'll basically just make one even surface, like a 1/4 inch thick all the way across. So if your floor is level, you know, this might be the better way to go because then you can really minimize and not waste any product. But since we are unlevel and we're going from basically 1/8 to a 1/2 inch, we're gonna need to push this around to where we need it. Now, the most important aspect about any type of floor leveler is to mix it to the proper ratio. So you wanna make sure you have a measuring bucket and then use that to determine the amount of water. You don't wanna really be just eyeing it up. It needs to be exactly what it says. Now, one thing that is really frustrating is having a 5-gallon bucket with these big 50-pound bags. It always overflows. So my recommendation is to simply just cut a spare bucket that you might have and slide that in, and then now you have a taller bucket and you won't have any waste. So this particular stuff is 6 quarts of water. So we're gonna measure that. You should get every area. Attention to where your screw is at. Now we'll go ahead and basically get another, yeah, there's my screw right there. I got my screw back there, so we're good. We push this around to our screw tip here. Okay, that should work. So that was a 5x9 bathroom. I used about 3.5 bags. Now, when you do mix a partial bag, I would definitely just recommend mixing the whole thing and just throwing out the rest that you don't need. So, you know, 1/2 inch out of level in a 5-foot bathroom or 9-foot long bathroom, this is what you're gonna need, about 4 bags of self-leveler, but it's definitely worth the expense. It's gonna make setting this towel a lot easier, setting the tub, and then, you know, we're doing a wainscoting all the way around here, so having everything nice and level is gonna make that a real breeze. So definitely worth the effort and the extra time to be able to, you know, to do this. All right, so now everything's 100% level. It's gonna make it really easy to install this tub. Let's just remove our little pieces around this drain so that it doesn't hinder
our installation of the drain.
See, it's nice and level, makes it a lot easier. Same here, lengthwise. Pretty awesome. All right, so when we frame this in, now you're obviously not gonna have a choice if you have an existing bathroom, but we did give ourselves a little bit of extra room here. We have about 60 3/4 inch. So we have 3/4 inch of fudge room. That really makes it a lot easier to install this cast iron tub. Now, I would imagine most of you that might have an older bathroom might already have this tub in place. So, you know, obviously it doesn't make any sense to move the thing out of there to be able to do all of this. I would just recommend refinishing after you basically have all the tile up and everything. So follow my guidance on the refinishing tub. This can all definitely be done after you do all the tile and get everything else done. I would say that'd be the final thing you want to do, is to refinish the actual tub. But if you're like me and we're trying to just find some restored items or restore some older items, getting the tub in here, it's going to be imperative that you have all the walls out, because otherwise it's really difficult to angle a cast iron tub into place. But since we have about 3/4 inch of fudge room, we're going to be able to slide this in fairly easy, other than just getting the heavy thing in here. Boy, this thing is ridiculously heavy. All right. Woo! So let's see what this level is, because we need to get a ledger board on the back. Wouldn't be level, which it is. And then not too bad that way either. Okay, so once you have that level, we'll go ahead and mark our studs for the ledger board. So we'll measure down for the ledger board after we get this out of here. We're gonna have to cut out a little bit more of our subfloor here for our drain. So probably cut another 2 inches out of that as well.
Did you hurt yourself?
No, I didn't hurt myself. It's just, it's a little ridiculous. I mean, it's definitely a struggle. You know, in some ways, if I wouldn't have had access to the sides here like I do, which I know that's cheating, it's definitely cheating, because you're not going to have that luxury in most bathrooms. You know, in some ways, you know, you almost need to put some kind of ability to slide it, you know, some kind of wheels or some kind of board or something to slide this all the way into place, because, you know, to try to, you know, even push this doesn't really want to move. So I'll have to do some thinking on that. But now that I have it in, I mean, we can just, I'll just lift it up on its side, and then we'll be able to just rest it right back into place. So, but this is about 7/8 of an inch. So we're going to measure down 7/8 of an inch on there and put our ledger board on. Okay, so 7/8 of an inch. Okay, so now that we know that's good, you can just put a little bit of silicone on this ledge. Just kind of use whatever you have laying around. That's all there is to it. That is in there. All right, cast iron stub installed.
No, wait, do it again for Instagram.
No, no, that's it. I'm not doing it again.